The theme of our retreat this weekend has been walking with God during difficult times. And we have heard from the members of our retreat team speak this weekend about their stories, their reflections on this theme. This morning, Chela and I want to reflect with you on the topic that kind of narrows in on that theme, encountering God in the unexpected.
God is walking with us. God is present with us. The question for us is whether we can see God amid our pain, our storms, our grief.
Chela and I invite you to reflect with us on a beautiful work of art by John August Swanson. He titles it, "Take Away the Stone." The painting is based on the narrative of that gospel reading, Raising of Lazarus, and again from the Gospel of John.
This is what the artists say about the painting.
Take Away the Stone is really the theme of Lazarus. And I had done many paintings of Lazarus and drawings. I have a whole sketchbook of drawings trying to, how do I feel about it? Because for me, when I would hear that story, it would be very emotional to think of how tragic that these two sisters had lost their brother. And the brother would have been the main person for them in that society. And then that Jesus was such a close friend of his that he shuddered and he cried at the loss. And I know in different funerals in our own family and how much confusion goes on when someone has died and what the family's going to do and how they handle it. I tried 3 different paintings, but the one painting that I always liked was called Take Away the Stone, because it had the feeling of a Mexican muralist, and it looked like the Day of the Dead. The other aspect is that the stone, that one looks at it in a larger picture, that we're all caught in a tomb, and then someone has to take the stone away so that we can become fully alive. That there's so many things block us as we slowly get older, and sometimes we become more dead to the world and dead to the people around us. And so this is a wonderful metaphor of take away the stone so we can become alive again. Take Away the Stone has 57 colors printed, and I based it on a watercolor, and that watercolor was really shaped. They're almost like gradations or chiaroscuro in a way, but there's not a lot of use of black, so that it isn't quite the chiaroscuro, but I did want to create almost like a cubist shaping of each figure. But then I realized that it's really connected to the artists that I liked. Some of the artists that I like the best are the Mexican muralists that also use that a lot in their murals. And also, it has a feeling of being in a Latin country or in Mexico for the Day of the Dead. You can see the figures leaving the town, bringing their flowers, bringing candles, and the musicians coming along here. And as they come over here to this scene, there the figures are moving the stone. They're taking the stone away. Here are the family and all the people that are mourning the death of Lazarus. And there's Christ, our Jesus. He's entered the tomb to embrace his friend and to bring him out of the tomb. And then here are all the young children that are curious, and they're looking at the figures here. And I'm not sure if it's morning or I think it's morning rather than the evening. But it's quite different than the other work, but I was hoping I would get like the feeling of emotion and also very solid with all these figures.
Look closely at this lovely painting. There is a long procession from the town to the tomb. It is a kind of journey, and that is how we want to approach our talk with you, as a journey. God walks with us, but in our trials, in our fears, and our sorrows, we are often feeling as though God is not present with us. We cannot see that God meets us, not only in our joys, but most especially in those times of turmoil and anxiety in our lives. So, let us begin our journey.
The journey begins at the village where Martha and Mary are caring for Lazarus.
They have sent a desperate, an urgent message to Jesus. Come quickly! Hurry! Lazarus is seriously ill, and he is close to death. But does Jesus come quickly? Promptly? No. In fact, he seems for some strange reason to linger in this other town. He could have healed Lazarus if he had wanted to from that town from far away. After all, he had done it before. Remember when Jesus was in Capernaum and a centurion came to him asking for help. The centurion said, Lord, my servant lies at home paralyzed, and he is suffering terribly. And the centurion continued, I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof, but only say the word, and he will be healed. And after that, at that moment, Jesus healed the servant from a distance. This time, however, the plea came not from strangers, but from the sisters that Jesus loved so intimately. But there was no distant healing this time. Why not?
We continue our journey with Martha and Mary, and by now it is too late. Lazarus has died.
After all their prayers, after all our prayers, storming heaven with our pleas, isn't it true that nothing seems to happen? Let's be honest, don't we sometimes feel the way perhaps Martha did? Where is Jesus when we need him? It was too late for Jesus to do anything at that point for Lazarus. The tomb had been sealed. Their hopes, too, had been sealed inside the darkness of the tomb. And Martha, in her customary blunt manner, tells Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. In contemporary language, Martha might have said it this way, Thanks for nothing, Jesus. But does Jesus get angry with us for responding this way, in our sorrow and in our anger, for responding in such a human way? No. Jesus has been on this journey with us, even when we could not see him or sense his presence with us.
In our journey, Jesus weeps with us. In our journey, we begin to discover something important. God meet us in those times, in places where we hurt most. The giver of life even meets us in the tomb where our shattered dreams, broken hearts, our fears are entombed and sealed.
But Jesus is not blinded by those tears. No, his tears are tears of prayer to the Father. Jesus, the great intercessor, is about to make something happen. He weeps, but now get ready. Fasten your seatbelts. Something big is about to happen.
With eyes filled with tears, Jesus shouts, "Take away this stone."
Can you see the similarity between the stone that sealed the tomb and the stones that so often block our way to hope? Jesus issues a very simple command: take away the stone. It sounds so simple, so basic, doesn't it? But not for Martha. She even scolded Jesus. Listen to what she says. Lord, already there is a stench because he has been dead 4 days. What is she saying to Jesus? What's the use in removing the stone? My brother has been dead 4 days, and there is even a terrible stench.
Martha is like all of us who at one time or another have been afraid to take away this stone in our lives for so many reasons, but mostly out of fear. We want to keep our fears hidden and sealed with a heavy stone in a tomb. For many years, I kept a memory sealed in a tomb with a stone. I refused to face a tragic memory, the sudden death of my father. I was afraid to take away the stone. My family and I live in a small town in Mexico. I was raised by loving parents, but it was my father who spoiled me. Whenever I got in trouble with my mother, I always ran to Daddy. He would say to her, "She won't do it again. Leave her alone." If there was anything I want, all I have to do was go to Daddy and he will give it to me. But those happy years ended when I was 12. My father died of a heart attack. He was only 42. My mother will not allow my brothers and sisters and me to attend my father's funeral. I can only explain her actions by saying she wanted to protect us from the grief of going to the cemetery and watching the burial. And so my memories went from pure happiness with my father to deep sense of his loss in the blink of an eye. Shortly after we moved to Los Angeles to be with family here, my mother felt we could get a better education here than in that small town in Mexico. Much later, I married the dream man of my life.
And that is very true.
We have 2 wonderful children, and there is where I have lived since I was 12. I did travel often with my mother to visit my hometown, but I never visited the gravesite of my father. And in spite of my happiness, there was a deep sorrow within in me. Insecurity, a fear that I could not explain to myself or my husband. Then some years later, about 30 years old, my mother and once again, I visited my hometown. But this time, it was different. For no reason that I could explain, I told my mother I wanted to go to the cemetery to see my father's graveside. And yes, I was afraid. I was afraid at the memories of the 12-year-old girl whose father spoiled her, and the God who took him away from me. I stood at his graveside. I cried and I prayed, and my mother stood by me. At that moment, the stone I had put there when I was 12 was taken away. I faced all my memories and fears and insecurities. I was suddenly at peace with God and with myself. I felt new. I felt like Martha and Mary. I felt like Lazarus. I felt I was alive again. My father was alive again.
So to the question, what's the use in removing the stone? Martha demanded to know of Jesus. That very question, what's the use? My brother has been dead 4 days. There's even a stench. What's the use? For so many years, Chela, I'm sure, asked the question, what's the use of visiting her father's graveside? He's been dead all these years. What's the use? This whole situation, as Martha might have said, whole situation stinks.
But Jesus knows our weakness, our shaking faith. That's okay. He still commands, take away this stone. Several of those who were grieving with Martha and Mary do as Jesus commands.
Remember the story I mentioned earlier about how Jesus cured the centurion's servant from far away, from a distance. And so again, why did he not do the same with Lazarus? I think it is because Jesus wanted to show us, to teach us, that God does answer our prayers. How? Through our service, through our love, our compassion, the compassion of others and of us. It is the villagers who walk in solidarity and with compassion with Martha and Mary to the tomb. Let's go back to the Swanson painting. Consider the colors he chooses for the subject matter, the death of Lazarus and his raising. Look closely. Swanson chooses not dark and bleak and sad colors. No, he paints with bright colors, bursting with joy. The tomb is not in some far off, desolate place. It is near the town. And the tomb is surrounded by a procession of villagers carrying the things of life, like flowers and candlelight and music, as well as tears and prayer. So much is going on in this painting, but there is a central focus. It has a theme. We see how God is encountered in a most unexpected place and in a most unexpected way. It presents with simple clarity the reality of death in the midst of life and the miracle of life in the midst of death and the presence of God in the midst of both life and death. Swanson paints a people of God in long procession, on a journey, walking with God in the midst of our trials and our challenges. And so the question, where are you in the midst of this procession, in this journey, as God walks with us? Study the painting carefully for a few moments. What do you see? More to the point, where are you in this painting? Are you with Martha and Mary? Are you grieving with them, consoling them, embracing them? Are you with those who in compassion bring flowers, music, maybe even food to comfort Martha and Mary? Perhaps you are with those who are strong enough to help push away that heavy stone. Or perhaps were you once dead, Lazarus dead, spiritually dead, emotionally dead, unforgivingly dead? What is happening to you? How is Christ calling you to new life?
Our journey ends with hope. Jesus shouts, "Unbind him and let him go. Lazarus, come out."
What does this mean for us? It means that the voice of God is calling us away from whatever it is that imprisons us. God's voice calls us from despair to hope, from darkness to light. God calls us from loneliness to community. Although Jesus called out to Lazarus, he did not act alone. Jesus relied on the community of faith to help him. Think about it. We are that community. We are the eyes and the hands and the feet of Jesus. Jesus answers prayer in so many ways, but think about it. He answers prayers mostly through us. Jesus grieved with us, yes, but Jesus needed help. He asks us to take away the stone. He calls us to remove the bandages of Lazarus. Jesus shouts to us, "Take away the stone." That is our job, our work, our ministry, to care for one another, to show compassion to one another, to perform acts of love, acts of charity, so that we all are set free to live and to share the miracles and the mysteries that life offers all of us. It is the voice of the one who loves us that gives us the strength, the courage, the grace to come forth and to live again. The story of Lazarus challenges us to listen for that voice that breaks into our lives, our difficulties in this world. The story reminds us that God meets us in the most unexpected place, in the most unexpected way, and always through you and through me.
God's voice is a light that shines in our darkness, a voice that calls out to us, "Come alive again." God listens as we pray, lead on sweet light.